The Empire of Leonia. In the dead of night, a funeral was held in the imperial palace, and the priest addressed the people gathered, saying that their princess had gone to God, and so they needed to accept this cruel reality and try to move on. On this day, the Princess Leonarf Irastella was buried there, who disappeared from the palace about half a year ago, when the whole country was shocked by such an unexpected disappearance, and since the body was never found, it was decided to hold the funeral without it. The people who attended the funeral didn't seem to be grieving much. Some were clearly crying, others complained that it was very boring, and others directly stated that the princess loved to cause trouble for others. But those people were immediately ordered to sit quietly. Among the people present, there were no people who were truly grieving for the death of the princess, including even the princess's brother. It was just a formal funeral for the princess, and what was strange was that she herself was watching her own funeral. She knew it would happen sooner or later, but she didn't expect it to be so bad. People didn't show any sadness, and were just waiting for it to be over quickly so they could get back to more interesting things. Suddenly, one of the audience members noticed an animal sitting on one of the benches and was visibly surprised that there was a fox in such a place. The heroine now looked like that, and so did everyone else, and perhaps no one could believe that Princess Irastella had turned into a fox. It all started when she was a child, when she learned about her abilities. In the past, the Leonia Empire was still blessed, just as she was as a child. On that day, there was an imperial banquet where many high-ranking nobles were present, and everyone was delighted because everything was so grandly arranged, and also because the princess was present with them that day. The girl ran around the hall. Despite the fact that her mother ordered her to be calmer and more graceful, people adored the princess, wondering how she could be so elegant and sweet, and so they called her the Pride of the Empire. The heroine was happy with the fact that all these people came to see her, and at one point she was so excited about her first imperial banquet that she was very careless. Suddenly she heard screams, and the heroine saw that the sculpture began to fall on her, and in a moment it stopped, tilted so that it should have fallen. But for some unknown reason, it stood still. Someone began to thank God, saying that someone's magic had saved the princess, and it was a miracle. But the girl felt that it was not help from the outside. She felt something right inside her, and so she tried to direct what she felt at the statue, and at the same moment it exploded into thousands of pieces. That day, she tested everything on her own experience, Princess Irastella, as if the most generous land gave a blessing, and from the very birth everything was in her hands. At that moment, all the guests present sincerely believed in the blessing of the empire, and their delight in the princess only intensified. And playing along, the girl said that from that day on, she would destroy anyone who dared to threaten the empire with her power. It was a blessing that would never be repeated, and because of this her life seemed to be filled with happiness and prosperity. And that evening her mother would put the girl to bed, and she would boast about what a great sorceress she would become, and her mother would support her in everything. After saying goodbye, her mother left her room, and the heroine was left alone in the room. She was so pleased with herself that she could not fall asleep. But at that moment, a large magic circle suddenly appeared above her bed. In a moment, it started to work. The girl flew out of bed, unable to resist, and a lot of letters with some information appeared around her. The girl was scared and did not understand what was happening, but in a couple of seconds, some memories came flooding back to her like waves. She realized that she had seen these memories before, that it was her past life, when she lived in another world, and then she died unexpectedly, and then she was lying in her bed as if nothing had happened. Now, after everything, she couldn't believe what she had just seen. It was as if she had become the main character of a novel she had read in her past life, the Princess Irastella, and this made her realize one incredibly terrible fact. If everything really is exactly like in the novel, then at the age of 18 she will receive a terrible curse, after which her life will never be the same again. Life and death in common hatred. It was hard for her to believe, because if her life was the same as in the novel, she would be cursed at the age of 18. And based on the plot of the novel, at 18, she would be cursed and unloved. But no one in the imperial family even knew that such a curse existed, and so in order to survive, she had to find out for herself. It seems that this curse was imposed on the imperial family a long time ago, and she did not understand why she was the one who fell under its influence, probably because she was the only known wizard in the family's history. The heroine did not want to end her life alone, and thanks to the novel, she already knew what would happen in the future, and if she could get rid of the curse, she could change her entire fate. But as if mocking her, the curse took over her life, and all her attempts ended in the same lonely and miserable death. And at the moment she realized it, it was already over. She opened her eyes again. Her return was very much like a miracle, and then she decided that even if she tried to change something, the only thing that would remain the same was death alone. And she just wanted to be loved and happy. Power, fame, or wealth, everything she gave away was meaningless, and in this case it was better not to want anything. And because of this, in her second life, she gave up the hope of being loved, and if she gives up love, she will still have power, money, and fame. And even if there is no one who will love her, there will still be no one who can oppose her. And so the princess of the empire, Iristella, became the one whom everyone should avoid. She became the culprit of all events, the one who created problems. The girl became arrogant, and the one who brings bad luck. She was just a lonely child. But the more she was hated, the stronger she became. And so she grew up to be the most prominent sorceress in the empire. And one day, when she was once again busy causing trouble for the imperial family, her parents suddenly died. And it soon became clear that dark wizards were behind it, and they set their sights on the empire. The heroine refused to be loved, but she never gave up on the people she loved, and so she vowed that she would make everyone who was behind it bitterly sorry. But she didn't know how a princess of an empire could chase dark sorcerers who had a lot of experience behind them. It would be a very difficult task, and in the end, to keep an eye on them, she hid her identity by turning into a fox. On that day, she took this form as usual to chase the sorcerers, and was on the verge of death due to an accident, overcame the crisis and opened her eyes. The heroine realized that she could no longer take her human form. 6 months passed, and she tried everything to turn back. But still, the fox form had significant limitations, and so nothing was useful. And the long absence of the princess resulted in her being declared dead by everyone. And that is why the funeral was held. She had heard that her funeral was to be held, so she came, hoping to find out something. But she could never have imagined that it would be such a terrible send-off. But the fox has convinced herself that now is not the time to think about it, and she needs to find a way to return to her body in order to protect the honor of her late parents, which was tarnished by black magic and the safety of the entire empire. It was almost impossible to hide the cause of her parents' death and secretly pursue the dark magicians in the form of a fox, and therefore she needed to return to human form as soon as possible. The girl believed that there must be another way, since she hadn't managed to change anything in 6 months, and there was only one person who could help her become a real fox. Her fiancé, Archduke Henrucian Keenan Adelasia, a Grand Duke from this family, has specialized in applied magic for centuries, and he must definitely have records of rare magical incidents. The heroine needed to find information about what was happening to her in his house, but the problem was that she was not in a position to do anything now. Their engagement was formal, although they had been friends since childhood, but now she could not even be sure that he would help her with this misunderstanding. When he was a child, he was very fond of animals, so she decided to pretend to get lost and come to him. It would never be too late to tell him what had happened. He might be angry that he had been deceived, but now she had no choice. Realizing that if he didn't come, her whole plan would be ruined, the fox waited for him. She waited for a long time, convinced that at least once he should come, but the man never showed up, and the fox resigned herself to this, convinced herself that he must have hated her a lot if he didn't come to the funeral. And so, upset that she did not wait for him, the heroine was about to leave when suddenly the figure she had been waiting for appeared before her eyes. The man walked past the animal and went straight to the portrait of the deceased. He could not believe that she had died, because he knew that this girl was not the type to die so easily. Suddenly behind him, he seemed to hear a voice calling his name, and the man thought he was hallucinating, but it was too strange. It sounded like Iristella's voice, and so he turned around sharply. The fox was happy that he was able to recognize it, and the man saw the animal and fell into memories of when he was a child looking for something in the garden. And at that moment the same fox appeared near him, trying to comfort the boy. But when they were caught off guard, it disappeared. The heroine cheerfully waited for him to recognize her, but the man did not believe that this fox was the same as the one he had as a child, and the girl had no choice but to use a cute strategy. Wrapping her tail around his leg, Herzog concluded that she wanted him to take her with him, and she began to circle around him, after which the man said that she seemed to want to seduce him. After a moment, he took her roughly by the collar, which made her embarrassed, but then he gently sat her down in his arms, assured her that he would take her with him, and she was glad for that. But she was uneasy about the fact that he had agreed to it so easily. Riding in a carriage to the estate, the fox was sleeping peacefully, and the man was thinking, looking out the window. When she disappeared, he stopped all his activities as Archduke and led the search in the area where she disappeared. But for 6 months, no trace or clue was found, and suddenly they decided to hold a funeral, even though no body was found. And now he was very worried about what had happened to her. Arriving at the right place, the man woke up the fox and took her into the house, where she kept looking at him as he put on mittens, obviously preparing for something. And in a moment he came up to her, saying that first she needed to be washed, as she was dirty, and this fact outraged the heroine. She tried to escape, but it was all in vain. The next morning, she was lying in a warm and soft bed, and her first thoughts were that she was finally back. But when she opened her eyes, she saw the Archduke sleeping in the same bed with her, and this shocked her. After a moment, she remembered that she was still in the body of a fox, and this reassured her. In any case, getting to this house was already considered a success, and now she was happy with her new home, and also because she was washed and clean. But at that moment she realized to whom she owed her cleanliness, and resolutely assured herself that she no longer wanted to suffer the humiliation of yesterday, when he treated her, the noblest princess of the empire, like dirty laundry. And because of this, she poked him in the face with her paw, saying that this was his punishment. And when she heard the sounds from him, she immediately turned around, pretending to be asleep, and the man woke up, not understanding why his cheeks were burning so much. She only pressed him lightly, but for some reason he woke up, and seeing the fox next to him, he reached for it, and the girl thought he had guessed. The heroine decided to pretend that she did not understand anything, so she slept soundly, and to her surprise, her husband took the blanket and pulled it over her, worried that she would not get sick, and then he left the room. Everything turned out to be simpler than she had imagined, and she had only worried for nothing. Now she realized that she had missed the soft blanket so much, that it had been hard for her all this time, and that's why she needed to have a good rest. Through her dream, she heard surprised voices that did not understand what the fox was doing here, and she opened her eyes sleepily and saw the maids in front of her, who were worried for some reason. They argued among themselves that the Duke was not very fond of animals, especially foxes. The heroine couldn't believe her ears. It couldn't be, because he had loved animals since childhood, and foxes were his favorite, and that's why he never hunted them, even in hunting competitions. But now, he looked like he was happy to see her, and even let her into his house. They wondered if Pan would be angry with her if he found out about it, but then came to the conclusion that they had to kick her out, and the fox, hearing this, began to hiss, telling herself that they would not dare to send her anywhere, and she would definitely stay here. The princess knew that if she was thrown out, she would have to live hard on the street again, just like before. And most importantly, she had plans to look through all the magic books here, so she couldn't go anywhere. The women decided that they should report this to the butler, but for now, they needed to look after her. At which point the younger maid suggested that she should go alone, and in this case, the others assured them that they would look after the animal. Left alone, the other maids suddenly looked at the animal strangely, which made it feel uncomfortable, and they began to pet it and praise it in every way, as if it were very beautiful, and its white coat was so beautiful, and white just like snow. The fox was very happy, realizing that they had fallen for her beauty. And when Henrushin was a child, when he first saw her transform into a fox, he could not take his eyes off her, so he spent the whole day hugging her and decided to raise her himself. Now the women were caressing the animal in every possible way. And ironically, at the moment the unknown person touched it, the girl remembered the two people she loved most in the world. Memories of her husband hugging her as a little girl, reassuring her that she had grown up a lot and was heavy, and the woman who took great care of her when she was sick, her mother and father, the people she loved more than life. And now she wondered if they were still alive, if they would recognize her as a fox, and now she missed them very much. At that moment, the fox was snatched from the hands of the maids, and the Archduke himself came when he learned that the animal was going to be expelled. He looked at it very coldly, which made it scared, and it decided that it might really be expelled. The man said that from today on, this fox was his pet, and this reassured the heroine very much. She did not know why she had such a desire, but life changed depending on how a person was perceived by the maids, and so with a proud look, the fox climbed on the man's shoulder, waiting to be presented as a very important animal. But things didn't go as she expected, and the Archduke, smiling, said that she was constantly causing problems, and her temper was very bad, but still she was a fox he valued very much, and so he would not let her be offended. A little time passed, and a place was allocated for the animal in the man's office, and on the same day, an assistant named Rovan came to see him on business, and with a bad look drew attention to the fox, concluding that it was the same animal that the Archduke was personally raising. Pointing to it, he said that it came from nowhere, and besides, it does not even respect its owner, and it is better not to approach such animals at all. Thus, he pointed to the owner's hand, which had many bite marks, and therefore he suggested finding a more worthy fox. These words angered the animal, and the Archduke confirmed this, saying that it showed no respect for its owner, and that it had a terrible temper, and then added that there was nothing to be done, because it was now his fox. The man claimed that she was a troublemaker and a tomboy, but he was raising her well and feeding her. At that moment, when he touched her nose with his finger, the girl bit angrily, frightening the assistant. The boy was sweating profusely and asked if the Archduke still wanted to keep such a fox, even if it behaved like that. It did not seem like he regretted his choice in any way, and the man assured him that he had once had a fox taken away from him. But this time she came to him on her own, and now he was sure that he would not let her go anywhere else. Listening to this, the animal realized that he still remembered and appreciated her. The fox that was taken away from him was the heroine. Henruschen could not know that she had turned into that fox. She thought it was a temporary feeling, but in reality it was much more serious. The assistant also added that he had something to report, namely that a marriage had recently been found that was arranged through magic, and the girl realized that this was exactly what she was looking for. And so she decided that it was worth diving into dark magic, and if she got close to him, she could get even more information. He did not trust the animal, so it would be a difficult task. At that moment, a girl approached him and said that she had found additional tracks, and as soon as she analyzed them, she would immediately pass them on. The heroine decided that it was worth getting closer to her first, and as soon as she left the room, she seized the moment and went right after her. Lisa had no idea how they should start a conversation, and she was also plagued by doubts that she might not like her as well as Rovan. She just wanted those she met to stop hating her. And yet if she wanted to get clues from the dark wizard, she had to act decisively. After a moment, the girl noticed the animal that was following her, and realizing that it was following her, she smiled in a friendly way and picked it up, saying that it was even cuter up close, and because of that, the girl decided to take it with her to lunch, and the Archduke gave them all a thoughtful look. Having eaten a lot of meat, the princess in the body of a fox lay down contentedly. Her stomach was already full, and she realized how long it had been since she had eaten so much. She had to look for magic clues, but she suddenly overeat. But in a moment she assured herself that there was nothing wrong with that. She needed to eat well and gain strength before looking for them, and since she was now in the body of a fox, she didn't have to worry about royal manners. Out of the corner of his ear, the fox heard two maids talking, saying that the Archduke had finally eaten well today, and they were all very surprised, and the butler almost burst into tears. These words surprised the heroine. She couldn't believe that it was such a rare phenomenon when Henruschen ate all the food. because as long as she remembered him, he usually ate well, although he ate less compared to her, as the girl still loved to eat. Wiping away his tears, the butler was happy that the gentleman was finally eating normally, realizing that it was most likely the fox itself, and so he asked if the man had already chosen a name for the animal, since they could not call it fox all the time. He agreed, and in a moment he went over to the table where the heroine was lying, asking what name would suit her, and the maid who was cleaning nearby assured him that she had heard that animals have different personalities depending on their names. The owner smilingly said that in this case, he needed to think things through, and all the servants saw this and began to glow with happiness, as he almost never smiled, and all thanks to the fox, and so everyone was very grateful to her. The heroine felt uncomfortable, as she was sure that she would get some very strange name, and the first attempt was a fox. But after a moment's thought, he said that he would call her a Fluffy, as it suited her very well, because she was still very young. But she obviously did not like it, and so the animal showed it with a disgruntled bite. The owner, realizing this, picked up another name, calling her Lala. Hearing this, the girl saw a picture of Henrushin being very young, and from shock she could not even move, because she thought that the man had guessed that she was the fox he had known since childhood. Lala was her nickname, given to her by her family when she was a child, and as an exception, Henrushin once called her that, and so she did not believe that it could be a coincidence. Seeing the animal's unhappy face, the man picked it up, saying that judging by the expression on its face, it did not like this name, so he decided to give it another name, namely Iristella. Realizing that she had been discovered, the girl was furious, and he only coldly asked what the reason for her secret visit was, after which he added that it was as if the princess's reputation had fallen into the abyss if she could not even hide her identity now. She realized that she had not yet had time to deal with all the cases of the black magicians. It was not in her plans to be revealed so quickly, and so she had to adjust them due to new circumstances. As a child, the boy often claimed that he wanted that fox, the one that lived in the garden, and while drinking tea, the heroine assured him that this was not the animal he wanted to raise. If you looked closely, you could see that they both had golden eyes that looked exactly the same, and he knew that she was that fox even then. Henrushin said that she had always been very proud, and yet she showed up in this form to find something that he had that she didn't, and for example, something that his family has been researching for a long time, magic and magical artifacts, including dark mages. At the last words, the princess began to listen, and he just continued. In the area where she disappeared, he found traces of black magic, and presumably because of this, she now looked like this, and that is why she came to this estate to get her face back. After a moment, his voice cooled, and in a completely different tone, he said that it was pointless to ask now, since she had always kept everything secret, but since she was now in the Archduke's house, he would not let her go. Since the girl could not speak now, the master suggested that she write down what had actually happened to her, and after reading it, he would decide what to do next, at which point Rovan entered the room, assuring her that he had important business, and the fox was sincerely glad to see him at that moment. The assistant informed them that the Marquis of Haviland had come to see them, along with his guardian Patrick, and the Archduke was not happy to hear this, but nevertheless recognized that it was time to meet them, after which they both went to see the guests. The heir of the Haviland family was Leighton Haviland, and he was the nephew of Henrushin, who was born in the marriage of his cousin and sister-in-law, but as a result of an accident that took place a year ago, they died, and the boy was the only heir. Since he was under 15, the boy needed a guardian, and that was Patrick, who arrived with him today. The heroine recognized this man. 6 months ago, she had seen him bullying Leighton, and so it was a mystery why he was still a guardian. The fox couldn't believe that Patrick was still with the boy, and so she decided to rush to help him immediately, leaving Henrushin for later. The man didn't trust her at all, and so she needed to find someone else to help her. On the way, she met Anessa. The heroine decided to ask the girl for help, and she, in turn, decided that the animal was just cuddling. The man who was talking to the girl did not pay attention to the animal and continued his speculation. He claimed that Mr. Patrick was trying to use that incident as an excuse to prevent the Archduke from taking the boy, The girl sincerely did not understand why their lord should be held responsible for what the princess had done, and if she had not broken Mr. Patrick's leg because she had nothing better to do, the boy could have been taken away with peace of mind. And then the heroine remembered, 6 months ago, she decided to try out Leighton's magic power. At the moment when it was time to show her skills, the man took the boy by the shoulder, told him to try not to disgrace their family. And as soon as he touched him, Leighton's magic became very unstable. And the reason for this was this man, Patrick. And so at that time the princess said that his attitude towards the future head of the family was very unacceptable, to which he only smiled meanly, pretending not to understand what was going on, because he sincerely cared for him. And although she was a princess, these words went beyond all limits. It was clear that this person was very bad, who could not be tamed. And so it was decided to use force. Just by looking at the changes in the boy's magical power, she could already tell that he had been mistreated. And instead of repenting, he spread false gossip, and so he could not be allowed to get away this time. The fox came to the Archduke's magic laboratory when she was a little girl. She often created magic objects, and so she got used to hiding here. She was afraid that this object would remain banned here as a particularly dangerous one, so she hid it well here. She was glad that she never threw it away then, and she could never have thought that she would ever use it in this way. Meanwhile, the owner of the house, Patrick, who was engaged in a dialogue with the guests, stated that it seemed absolutely natural to him that the future Marquis of Havelan should be raised by the Havelan family, and such interference by another family in their personal affairs no longer seemed like an act done out of the goodness of their hearts. The owner asked to think about this decision again, as magic is a rare gift, and systematic training at the academy would benefit the boy, to which the guardian assured him that the strength of the Haviland family was not in magic, but in the ability to handle a sword, and therefore the boy would grow up in accordance with the path his family had chosen, and therefore he asked to stop any manipulations in this matter. The Archduke knew that Leighton could not become a knight. He was born with magical powers like his father, and so unfortunately, he had a very weak body, which left the man with only 2 options. Either he would respect the opinion of the Haveline family and therefore step aside, or he would have to take the boy by force and then send him to the academy. So he repeated his question about changing the decision, but it was all in vain. And then suddenly he noticed the heroine out of the corner of his eye, and she met his gaze, proudly walked forward, and then, to the surprise of everyone present, knelt down to Patrick. In this empire, they believed that the more animals they raised, the higher their reputation was, and therefore no matter how disgusting the creature was, they would not throw it away. And so the man did not mind the animal, and began to pat it on the head, despite the fact that it was obviously in pain. She started to climb on his shoulder, and the man was only surprised that she liked him so much, decided that he was better than the owner of this estate, and the Archduke all this time could not understand what she was doing, but decided that the heroine must have a plan, and so he decided not to interfere. The animal climbed on his head, imperceptibly marking the man's neck. If he does nothing to the boy, nothing will happen, but if he decides to harm him in any way, it will create a strong reaction. When he finished, the fox ran away from him and climbed into his lap, and seeing this behavior, Patrick said that she was out of control and had no manners at all, and she was exactly like her master. He stood up, saying that they had finished all their business and were leaving with the boy. As they were leaving, the owner assured them that they should be careful, that they were not done yet, and that he would return. As the guest was leaving, he said that this was the last time he would say this, that if the Archduke stuck his nose in other people's business, then they would go to the imperial palace, not to this estate, and the boy next to him, uncertainly, said that it was time for them to go, and so he also said goodbye. And then she remembered that she had some business with this child, and so she approached him, showing him to come to her, and putting her paws to his hands, she said that on behalf of Princess Iristella, later when he needed it, she would fulfill his request no matter what. After saying goodbye, the princess summed up the results. The preparations were finally completed. The device was attached to Patrick, as well as to Leighton's leg, and now they had to wait for a real adult to help the boy. The most adult person in their family was Sophia Havelin, She actually makes all the decisions in relation to the Havellans and is the respectable person of the family. She is cold-blooded and stingy in her expressions, and even cold towards her only grandson, Leighton. But still, she is not one of those who will stand aside if she learns about Patrick's crimes, and therefore will definitely punish him justly. While seeing off the guests through the window, the fox suddenly felt the back of her head start to burn strangely, and at that moment, the Archduke grabbed her by the scruff of the neck, at which she began to get angry, ordering him not to catch her so suddenly. The owner said that he was uneasy about what she had put on the guest, and therefore wondered if it had been stolen from a magic laboratory. He claimed that the animal had only one chance to tell the truth, as he also knew what the thing was used for. Suddenly, she touched his ear with her paw, where words began to fly into his head, and when she finished, the heroine added that her husband must have seen it too, and now Patrick would not touch the boy with his finger, and so they must hurry and send a letter to the Marquis of Haviland. Later in the evening, the guests returned to their mansion, and the boy said that he was very sorry for his unacceptable behavior today, to which the elder rolled up his sleeves and said that every offense should be punished. Leighton was already expecting to be beaten again today. He was scared, and yet he prepared himself for the worst. And meanwhile, the man had already raised his hand in a threatening manner, ordering him to cover his mouth so that no one would hear them. Suddenly, everything around him began to shine, and a barrier appeared in front of the boy, and in a moment, Patrick was already lying on the ground, visibly injured by this power. But this only made him angrier, and he began to blame the child for this, saying that he did not dare to use these tricks against him, and asking who told him to do this, he angrily stretched out his hand to the boy. Leighton tried to justify that it wasn't him, but he wasn't listened to anymore, and the hand was about to hit him again, but this time he failed. The barrier appeared again, and this time it threw the man several meters away. The wounded man began to threaten him, assuring him that this time he would teach him a lesson so that the evil one would not dare to do anything stupid again. And suddenly a voice was heard behind him, asking how he would teach the boy. Patrick was horrified to recognize this voice and turned around to see Sophia looking down at him, angrily asking if he dared to lay a hand on his pet, as well as her grandson, and he embarrassingly began to make excuses, assuring her that it was all a misunderstanding and he had never laid a hand on the child. The woman said that Leighton had clearly told her everything that upset him, at which point the boy claimed that he had done nothing wrong, and Patrick said that the future head of the family was lying again, and he told him that he should not avoid responsibility, even if he was still too young. The woman, still in a cold voice, ordered him to shut up, as she did not want to hear it anymore, since this magical barrier was designed to harm the enemy, and he had to know that the field reacts only to danger. After that, she turned to Leighton and immediately hugged him, saying that her grandmother was wrong and they needed to be together. She kept her distance because she wanted him to become a strong man who could bear the weight of the title of head of the family. And in the end, it led to this result. And so she was very sorry. Luckily, Sophia saved Leighton from him, and a few days later, a letter came from her, which was intended for the Archduke, in which she stated that thanks to him, she realized her mistake. Patrick was expelled from the family and punished. Leighton began to develop his abilities and entered the academy, and whatever power he had now, the woman could not understand then that he was the constant companion of the Marquis of Haviland, and thanks to the fact that instead of an insufficient grandmother, he had such a wise uncle like him, and they managed to prevent a big problem, only thanks to him. Everything ended well. From the very beginning, this thing was created for little Henrushen, but fortunately it helped another child as well. The heroine was indescribably pleased and proud of her result, and now she was showing with her whole body that all this happened because of her, and so he should be grateful. Otherwise, who else would have found this artifact and stuck it on Patrick? Turning to him, she asked if even after all this he could not accept her, because that was not all, and if he kept her with him, she would help with everything, and in a moment she was shocked that she was not called here for that. The man was uncomfortable, asking if she would now forbid herself to be kicked out just because everything was resolved thanks to her. But after a moment of resignation, he said that he would no longer ask about what had happened to her, and now she could do whatever she wanted, and the heroine was indescribably happy about it. Later, an assistant came into the office and handed over a document, saying that it was a report on the current circumstances and the search for the princess. And as he had ordered last time, it was the result of expanding the coverage to foreign countries. The master thanked me for my work and suggested that I stop searching. The fox was surprised by this information. He did it for her, even when her family would have given up. But it was still the right decision to stop searching. The assistant was surprised by this decision, claiming that he had previously been ordered not to stop until they found her, to which the Archduke repeated that he had ordered to stop the search, and now he could be free. And they said goodbye. Left alone, the heroine began to look at him smugly, summing up what she had heard. It all meant that he was looking for her, and all this time he was only pretending. He had been like that since childhood, and even if it was such a small thing, she thanked him for not changing. The fox was looking at him with pleasure, and the man, embarrassed, asked her not to make such a strange expression and not to look at him for so long, to which she lightly said that she could not help herself when she was so pleased. She never imagined that someone would look for her. Henruchen was her best friend and also her fiancé. She thought it was because of her status as a princess, and after that incident, her relationship became completely different, which is why she did not expect anything, and for that he was looking for her. She was very grateful. The Archduke turned to the fox, asking if it thought he really wouldn't find it, adding that it seemed as if it had not only become a fox outwardly, but had begun to think the same way. This impudence angered the princess, as he first praised her and then immediately insulted her. But still, she was a little touched, because she had been found by someone she would never have thought of. And now, looking at him, she wondered if he had always been so handsome. After a moment, the man said that he remembered that besides him, there was another family that was desperately looking for her, namely the Count Azurdi, and after a moment, a little shyly, he added that he was nevertheless looking for her more than anyone else. The heroine was sincerely surprised that her family was looking for her, and although she was quite loyal to the imperial family, they had no contact with her, and now the question arose whether they were really looking for her, or, more likely, they were black magicians. And in this case, the theory of why they would have sought her out is justified, since black magic is quite common among the nobility. Her thoughts were interrupted by Rovin, who came inside, leading a man, and introduced him as the master who would be training the fox from now on, and a leash was also custom-made for her. The heroine was outraged by this decision, angrily asking if Henruchen had thought it all through without saying a word to her, and he turned to his assistant, coldly asking if he had ever told him to do something like that. He claimed to know how well the Archduke takes care of this fox, but next time the scar might appear on his face instead of his arm, and the owner confirmed this, adding that since it was a wild animal, it might indeed have to be tamed. But after a moment, he added that they should send the trainer back, since he was going to take care of her personally, and he didn't need a master for that, and so he ordered the man to leave. Rovin assured him that he understood his feelings, but still he had to be sure that it would be well tamed, in which case he would be calm, and at that moment, Henruchen ordered the animal to give him a paw, but the heroine was in no hurry to listen to him, claiming that she was not his puppy, after which he repeated the order, secretly telling her that if she listened to him, he would give an order to cook her a special meal for dinner, and so she had no choice but to listen to him. After repeating this trick several times, he turned to his assistant and confirmed that she was listening to him, and then began to stroke the animal's head, telling it that if it continued to listen to him, they would be able to stay together without any obstacles. And at that moment it felt as if it were a pet fox. His stroking brought the heroine back to the old days. When she was a child, the girl asked him if he was going to continue to follow her, and after receiving an affirmative answer, she said that if he wanted to give up halfway, it would be better not to start. But the boy still said that he would not give up, after which the girl said that in that case, he should follow her. At the time, Henruchen was smaller and weaker than her, and it was hard to beat her with just the desire to win. But a year later, he finally managed to catch up. As a sign of this, she asked him to give her his hand, and he hesitantly agreed. And at that moment, a magic circle appeared under his feet, and he flew up, and the happy girl said that it was a gift for her hard work during the year. And now, giving him a paw, she remembered that she had done this with him before, and did not understand how it had come to this, that the princess began to give him a paw, and so the master said that he was doing a good job of training. The assistant had no choice but to agree, but he added that he would keep an eye on their relationship. In the end, everything was resolved, and from that moment on, she could stay in the manor without worrying about the reactions of others. The maids looked at the animal and said that she was in a particularly good mood today. When it came to the gate, the animal expected that everyone would be delighted with it, but they just said it was cute, and such praise confused her. From the moment a child starts walking, they are taught royal etiquette, and even when the gate is full of grace and dignity, they still called it cute, and yet, she believed that the people's affection for her had returned. She could not feel it when she was a princess. But even looking at her reflection in the window glass, she saw that she was beautiful in any form, whether fox or human. At that moment, the owner passed by and asked where she was going in such a hurry in the morning. The heroine was indignant at this question, saying that now that she was the official vixen of the duchy, she could go wherever she wanted, to which he said that Leighton had come to say hello before he entered the academy, and so it was time for them to meet him. First of all, the boy took the fox in his hands, said that he missed it very much, and called it Pushinka, and a moment later he saw his uncle and said hello, asking how he was doing. The heroine realized that he had definitely changed since the last time, and even grown a little, and after a moment, he claimed that he had something to say to her, namely, he wanted to thank her for her help, while hugging her. The heroine assured him that she should have acted faster, and that he should not be thanked for it, and in a few seconds, she realized that she was having trouble breathing, so she fought him off with her paws to stop squeezing her. Ignoring her, he turned to the man, asking if he could take the fox with him to the Magic Academy, saying that many people bring their pets to the academy. She showed him with her whole appearance that he should not allow it. The man said that he needed to think about it, and therefore, taking the fox away, he said that the road would be long, and therefore he should rest. Watching them leave the room, the heroine realized that so far she hadn't been able to find any clues in the master's magic books, and she wouldn't want Henrushen to give her to the boy now. The reason she couldn't say for sure was that Henrushen was particularly attached to this child, and he almost never refused his requests, and now he really could send her to the academy, at Leighton's request. After showing him the room, Henrushen told him that the boy would be leaving tomorrow, and asked if he was not afraid, and if he was not worried, and the child confirmed this, adding that he was still very interested in what he could learn there. The man supported his wish, adding that even in this he was very similar to his parents, and when he goes to the academy, he will be able to learn a lot, as well as try many things, and so he will be able to fully develop his talent. And as a sign of this, he gave him a whole bunch of books, saying that they were very good and that he should study them if he wanted to learn magic. And then he said that the boy should keep in mind that magic would give him omnipotent power that no one could take away. At the end of his instructions, he said that he could not give the fox away, and when Leighton heard this, he began to beg to let her go, assuring him that Pushinka obeyed him well. And the Archduke noticed that the boy constantly called her that, and so he wondered where this name came from. Leighton said that she has very fluffy fur that looks like a snowball, and that's why he named her that, and she listens to him very well, and she likes the name he gave her, and that's why he said he will take very good care of her. At that time, in the princess's room, she sneezed, thought someone was talking about her, thought it must be Leighton discussing the case, and at that moment she remembered today's events, where the boy followed her and kept calling her Fluffy. When she paid attention to him, he was almost very touched by it, and she didn't understand why they called her that, and it annoyed her. So he smeared his feet in powder, wrote the word no in big letters, and decided that Henrushen should definitely see it. She woke up drenched in sweat, realizing that she hadn't noticed how she had fallen asleep, and it was already morning. While she was waiting for Henrushen, she suddenly fell asleep, and for some reason he wasn't there now. At that moment, she assumed that yesterday he might not have seen the message she left, and the animal did not know what he would do if he was taken to the academy. At that moment, a man sitting next to her, reading a newspaper, noticed that she was already awake, and then said that it was time for her to get ready and they would go to Leighton. and she was outraged to realize that they had decided to give her to the boyfriend. Later, she was already sitting on her luggage, thinking about her next steps. There would be too many extra eyes at the academy, and so she would not be able to study black magic, and so she would have to escape and find another way. A little later, a happy guy came running in, asking how the fox slept, adding that Fluffy was very beautiful in the morning, thus making the princess feel ashamed, since she was about to run away from him, and he was making her feel guilty. At this point, the Archduke explained to him that the girl's name was not Pushinka, to which he assured him that the animal liked this name, and therefore should be changed. And she began to shake her head from side to side, showing with all her appearance that she did not like it. At that moment, he took it in his hands, claiming that it was his gift, and the fox in his arms began to worry, not believing that they could just give it away, as it would not even be able to escape if things went on like that. The man asked her to try to be friends on the way to the academy, and at that moment the heroine had already accepted it, when suddenly a servant appeared from behind her, holding a puppy, and Uncle introduced him as a dog who would protect the boy and help him in many things as a good friend and spiritual guide. Leighton was very happy to receive the gift, and the heroine exhaled a sigh of relief when she realized that they decided to keep her, and then ordered the dog to make friends with the boy, saying that they would become very good friends, and he barked in response, as if he understood her. At that moment, the master covered her eyes, ordered her to stop looking like that if she didn't want to stay Pushinka for the rest of her life and live with the boy, but she just wanted to check something, deciding in a moment that she was just going to give up. After finishing the preparations, Leighton got into the carriage and said that he would study hard, and next time he would show his improved skills, to which Henruchen assured him that he would be waiting, and if he needed anything, he would help everyone, and if he could come for the holidays. As he said goodbye, he wished Pushinka to stay happy, and she realized that next time she would definitely regain her human form, and then they would meet as wizards. During yesterday's day, Henruchen said that he could not give the boy the fox, as it was very important to him, and maybe now he did not understand, but everything matters first, and if he meets someone dear to him, he needs to develop his power to protect her. While in the carriage, Leighton could understand his uncle's words a little bit. Stroking the puppy, he asked him to take care of him, assured him that he was now his first friend and part of his family, and that he would always protect him. Looking at the carriage which was disappearing from sight, the heroine was sad that he also left, and behind her she heard the words calling her name Hara. Surprised to turn around, the man asked if she liked the new name. At this point, she began to get indignant, angrily asking why no one in this family had a sense of names, after which Henruchen, in her ear, quietly asserted that he could not call her Iristella, adding a moment later that perhaps he should. These words frightened the animal, and in a moment he addressed it again with the name Hara, and this time it only sadly agreed. Rovin, who was nearby, said that finally the fox had a name, assuring that he liked Fluffy better. The owner said that it was not just a good name, it was a very good name, and at that moment the happy maid said that this name suited her very well, and therefore they would often call her that, as it seemed that the Archduke really cared for Hara very much. A moment later, Anessa approached them, also calling her Hara, and holding out her hand, asked her to come to her when her husband was away, and assured her that she would take good care of her. The girl was so overwhelmed that she could not contain her feelings, so she simply said that she liked Hera very much, and the fox reciprocated, and at that moment she realized that being a fox was not so bad. While she was a princess, no one loved her. Maybe it was only because she was in the form of a fox. But the most important thing is that Henruchen did not hate her. Fortunately, this bothered her the most, and at that moment he ordered everyone present that from now on everyone except him would call her simply Lisa, to which the maids were outraged, assuring him that they also wanted to call her Hara. The maids, realizing the seriousness of the master's intentions, asked if they could have a second option, but he did not allow them to do so either, saying that he had no options or nicknames, so let them just call her Bald, and the heroine did not mind the nickname, and it surprised him that he was so petty about such things. The name Hara became a secret that only Henruchen knew. As a child, after he lost a fox, he decided that he needed to come up with a name, and in a moment without thinking this name appeared on his lips, after which he decided to keep the secret of this name forever. In this most important first case, there is not only a fox, but also a girl. One day, as usual, the princess was watching the servants, who for some reason were surprisingly fussy that day, and she was very curious as to why everyone was so busy today. Suddenly, someone in the audience said that time was passing very quickly, and today was the anniversary of the founding of the state, and with sincere delight, she realized what a day it was, and did not understand how she could have ever forgotten about it. Foundation Day is the most important day in the empire, and the imperial family prepares for it with the greatest diligence and scope throughout the year, as it is an occasion to praise the endless glory of the Leonia Empire. The Archduke of Adelasia, as a representative of the most influential family in the empire, has always been present at this holiday. And all this means that Henruchen will also be at the banquet, because he is one of the greatest mages in the empire, and he simply could not miss the holiday of the founding of the empire. Entering his office, Lysithea overheard a dialogue between the assistant and Henruchen, where the latter assured him that the Archduke was to attend a banquet in honor of the founding of the empire, and he assured him that he would be present, so he had to make sure everything would be fine. The heroine decided that now was a good opportunity, so she jumped on the table, surprising the audience, after which she attracted the man's attention and began to look at him with shining eyes, hoping that he would be able to understand what she wanted. He did not immediately understand what was going on, but later it dawned on him, and he asked if she still wanted to go with him, and she happily confirmed it, asking him to take her with him to the banquet in honor of the founding of the empire. Since it was a banquet in the palace, she should come. The man briefly said no, and this angered the animal, as she wanted to know why, and he explained that he had never taken animals to a banquet, which made her even more outraged, saying that she was not really an animal, and besides, other nobles often took them, and so he could not do this to her, out of the blue, because she had a reason. The Azurdi family has been looking for her for the past months, and although they have never had much connection or contact with her, and if her hunch is confirmed and they are black magicians, they will definitely pull something off on the day the empire was founded. The heroine assured herself that she had to check it out and somehow stop them, and if she got a chance, she might be able to meet her only blood relative, her brother, who was now the emperor. And so, making an ominous expression, she turned to Henruchen and said that she would go with him no matter what, and he, in turn, felt uncomfortable with this look, and in general, he did not understand how a fox could make such a face, and so he was worried. Henruchen's ominous premonition became a reality, and the princess followed him throughout the day, bothering him in every way possible, either by soiling important documents or by getting under his feet during a fight, whether in the dining room or in his office. She asked him to take her. The owner said that all her attempts would be useless and that she should stop doing it. And then she got off him and looked at him, thinking of another way to get him to take her with him, and in a few seconds, a brilliant plan entered her head. Declaring that she was changing tactics, the fox jumped on the man's lap. The last method was the charm operation. As a child, he liked her foxy appearance so much that he fell in love with her, and this time she decided to return to this trick. The animal stood on its hind legs and began to gently ask him to take it. The Archduke understood her intentions. She did not want to be kicked out, but instead, he would not pet it. The heroine accepted this challenge, saying that she would see how long he could hold on. It didn't last long. His hand was clenching and unclenching, and in a minute he gave up. Putting his hand on the animal, he said that he had lost, and it could do what it wanted, and this made the heroine happy, because she could finally return to her home, her hometown, her palace. A moment later, he asked her a question, Henruchen, asking what she wanted, because the princess never wanted to go to a banquet at the imperial palace, which meant that she needed something else. At that moment, she wished he was smarter. She needed those who practiced black magic, and to find them, this was the most reliable way. But she couldn't tell him something she wasn't sure about, and it was dangerous. But in any case, she was sad that she couldn't communicate with him, and seeing the pen and letter in front of her, she was sure that it would work. Trying to write something with a pen, the heroine said that she needed to pick up something from the princess's palace, but what exactly she would be able to say only later, the Archduke agreed. adding that in return he had a condition for taking her there. He didn't know all the details, but he had some ideas, and so with a snap of his fingers he suggested coming up with a secret signal, and that was his condition. They could go to the banquet with a calm mind if they had some basic ways to communicate. The heroine agreed, and starting Henrushin, with a pleased expression on his face, said that, first of all, to cry only in emergencies, and this immediately confused the princess. He suggested that she should cry whenever there was an emergency, although she had never cried in front of others in her life. Secondly, when she would need help. And then he started to show a strange pose, and in a few moments, the fox realized that he decided to tease her under the pretext of creating a way to communicate, and so a little later, she had to hit him. At that moment, Rovan entered the room, and a strange picture appeared in front of him. A fox was hanging on the owner's face. It was going to hit him, but it was so scared that it automatically decided to run away. Through force, the Archduke told his assistant that he would accompany Hara to this banquet, and then asked the fox to get off him at last. And Rovan looked on in silence, unable to remember when their master had become such a merciful man. A few days passed, and the heroine looked at herself in the mirror, admiring her beauty, and the most important thing about her outfit was that it was eye-catching, which would make her task easier. The reason why Iristella chose her outfit so carefully was not only because she was visiting her home, the Imperial Palace, for the first time in 6 months, but also because she had always played an important and valuable role on the day the Empire was founded. Being a genius of this age, the princess demonstrated a magic that even she admired, showing the people of the Empire the endless glory of this state, and always illuminating the country in its beautiful form, and therefore dressing luxuriously was a common thing for her. And now she was choosing a pin together with the maid, and the heroine was happy about it, because in Henrushin's absence, she was the first person with whom she could maintain a dialogue, and she tried it on and said that it would look very nice from the outside. Looking at herself in the mirror, she was satisfied with everything, and the maid was flattered by this, saying that everything suited her very well, and she would do everything necessary to make Mrs. Baldy the most brilliant at the banquet. They had brought only the best accessories, and she hadn't even expected this, because everything was of the highest quality, and so now she was even a little bit touched, and even if it all looked more modest than usual, it still looked quite good. Henrushin noticed her, and he noticed that she looked quite excited, although there was a reason he didn't want to bring her to this banquet. For the last 6 months, the Empire has been trying to erase her existence, and what she thought was natural about being a princess would disappear, and he didn't know if she could handle that kind of reality. It was the evening before the banquet, and the heroine decided that she should get a good night's sleep before it. Henrushin, who was by her side, quietly asked if she was going to just go like that, and he was referring to the state of her hair. The princess confirmed this, realizing that she did not look as she should, to which the man smilingly assured her that she could rely on him in this matter and that he would bathe her properly before going out. The fox was shocked at the idea and assured them that she didn't want to do it, but they didn't listen to her anymore. So she asked that it wasn't him, let him tell Anessa to do it, and they took her away. Even though she was in the form of a fox, she was very ashamed. The next day there was a banquet, and the princess was determined to succeed. She really liked the maid Sarian. She understood her better than anyone else, and so when she got her body back, the heroine decided to take her as her maid of honor. Although she was still in the body of a fox, the girl felt as if today was her return as a princess, and perhaps it was because she was polished to a shine. The maid was very touched by them, so she said that when she looked at the two of them, she saw that they were in perfect harmony with each other, and Rovan confirmed this, adding that he had never noticed it before, and holding them up to the mirror, he was asked to see for himself. The maid assured him that when Mrs. Baldy was around him, the master shone even brighter, and Mrs. Baldy also looked even more brilliant. The heroine just looked at him defiantly, thinking about how beautiful her body was now, and Henrushin understood what she was thinking without even looking at her. It was time to go to the palace. The princess could not have expected to return here in the form of a fox, and new sensations came over her from looking at the corridor of the banquet hall where she played as a child. Her favorite thing in this city was the portrait of the founding emperor, with whom they looked like 2 peas in a pod. Now that she was older, she had lost all interest in this place, and looking around the hall, she realized that she missed it all more than she had expected. Already in the hall, Henrushin decided to ask her for something, namely that even if she met a familiar person, she should pretend not to know him, and not to wander anywhere alone, and if possible, she should always stay with him, and most importantly, not to get into trouble. The fox assured him that she wouldn't have wanted it to happen, but if something happened, there was nothing to be done, so she apologized to him in advance. Going deeper into the hall, people began to pay attention to them, and two women noticed the brooch on the fox's head, and they recognized it as a piece of jewelry that the master makes only once a year, and then added that although the fox was part of the Archduke's family, it was absurd to give away such a valuable thing. Suddenly, a woman approached the man, asking if this was the fox he was taking care of, and suddenly, from the side of them, he heard dissatisfied voices, as if they were going to talk to him first, and it was worth taking the risk and telling him something first. The woman introduced herself as the daughter of the Marquis of Francion, and she claimed that the fox was very cute and asked for permission to pet it again. The man said that he should first get permission from her, but the woman reached out to her without waiting for permission. Such impudence angered the princess, and she hissed angrily at the aristocrat, thus frightening her, and she claimed that this fox was extremely fierce, to which Henrussion said that if she was not touched first, she would not bite anyone, because in front of her was a fox that was careful of uneducated people. The woman walked away ashamed, and at that moment, the fox caught the dissatisfied voices of people who claimed that this year's banquet was lacking in brilliance compared to the last. They argued that the princess was no longer there, and it seemed as if they were attending banquets in another country, and now the day of the founding of the empire looked so gloomy and ordinary, which made them feel depressed. Such attitudes angered the princess, but if they understood perfectly well that a holiday without her was not a holiday, she decided to let it pass, and so, claiming that it was worth raising the atmosphere of the banquet a little, she got off her shoulder, and when asked where she was going, the animal assured that she wanted to add a twist to this banquet. The heroine ran out into the garden, looking for the right object, and quickly found a magic flower, which was supposed to contain magical power, and if you lightly touch it, the whole hall should be covered in these flowers. Suddenly, something began to shine in the sky, and the heroine realized that something else was beginning, and the emblem of the empire appeared from the burning stars, and the fox was fascinated by this sight, as if the Milky Way was pouring down from the sky. Apart from her, the only one who could use such magic was Henrushin, but he was not a master of this type of magic, and so he had never used it without any purpose, and even when his father asked him to do it, he politely refused, saying that it would look too arrogant on his part, and now she was very interested in what the purpose of this magic was, and whether it was done for her sake. But when she got back to the banquet hall, she couldn't ask him anything. He asked if the heroine had seen it, and at that moment she realized that all this was done for her. It seemed that he felt sorry for her, but now was not the time for emotions, as she might not have such a chance again, and today she had to learn as much as possible. Running among the crowds of people, she listened to what they were saying, but she still didn't hear anything interesting. Many of the faces were familiar to her, but still she couldn't trust any of them. When suddenly she noticed an interesting figure, namely a girl named Greta Lattern. She was the eldest daughter of the Marquis Lattern, who wanted to become a flower of society, and as the state of her prestigious family deteriorated, she became the princess's maid and used her name to gain influence, and so she took a higher position in social circles. Now it was clear that she had risen higher, but on the other hand, the princess's place below the throne had long since disappeared, and the flowers with which she decorated the hall for each banquet had already been replaced, as if everyone was just waiting for her to disappear. In the first life she spent after being transplanted to this world, she died from the curse of shared hatred. She had previously taken it for granted that no one loved her, but seeing it with her own eyes was her mistake.